1980, Ozzy Osbourne was finished. Kicked out of his own band and drowning in self-destruction, the world had already moved on. Then came a song, a riff that ripped through the silence and refused to let go. Crazy Train didn't just save his career, it turned him into a legend again. This is the story of how one track resurrected a rock icon and set the stage for an unstoppable second act. The fall was brutal, but the comeback was louder. In 1979, Ozzy Osbourne was fired from Black Sabbath. The band he had helped create from the ground up decided they could no longer deal with his relentless drinking and escalating drug abuse, bringing a brutal end to a decade that had defined the sound of heavy metal. It was the collapse of an era, and for Ozzy, the separation felt like an execution of his identity. In the months that followed, he checked into a Los Angeles hotel and barely left. Curtains drawn, television on, bottles scattered across the floor, days bled into nights filled with alcohol, cocaine, and silence. The industry had already decided his story was over. The press painted him as a lost cause, and the phone stayed quiet. While Black Sabbath toured without him, Ozzy's world kept shrinking. Bills piled up, his physical health deteriorated, and the voice that once commanded arenas now went unused for weeks at a time. Musicians who had once fought to work with him turned away, worried his chaos would destroy their own careers. He was floating without direction, unsure if he even wanted to find one. It was Sharon Arden, daughter of music manager Don Arden, who refused to let him sink. She moved him into a house, made sure he ate, and began pushing him toward the studio again. Her faith in his talent was unshakable, even when he was too numbed by despair to believe it himself. This was the first fragile lifeline in what felt like a free-fall. Still, Ozzy resisted. The depression had him in a chokehold, and the fear of trying and failing to start over kept him paralyzed. Each day without a stage felt like another nail sealing the coffin of his career, and the thought of reinventing himself seemed absurd. He was caught between the shadow of his past and the emptiness of his present. By the end of 1979, he was at absolute rock bottom. His name had faded from the headlines, the music world had moved on, and the future promised nothing but silence. What he didn't know was that a single, unstoppable guitar riff was waiting to pull him back into the light. In late 1979, Sharon urged Ozzy to audition new musicians for a solo project. Reluctant but desperate, he traveled to Los Angeles, where fate would introduce him to a young guitarist named Randy Rhoads. Barely 22 years old, Randy walked into the room carrying a white Les Paul, unaware he was about to change rock history. From the moment his fingers hit the strings, the air shifted. Ozzy had expected another generic hard rock player, but what he heard was something else entirely. Randy blended classical technique with blistering speed, creating a tone both sharp and melodic. Each note cut clean through the fog of Ozzy's despair, pulling his attention into the present. It was the first time in months that music felt alive again. The audition was brief but unforgettable. According to Ozzy, Randy barely had to play before he was hired. Sharon saw it too, the instant chemistry, the unspoken understanding between two musicians from different worlds. Randy's creativity lit a fire under Ozzy, and suddenly the idea of a new band didn't feel impossible. It felt necessary. Soon after, Ozzy, Randy, bassist Bob Daisley, and drummer Lee Kerslake began rehearsing what would become Blizzard of Oz. In cramped studios, Randy's riffs poured out, giving structure to the chaos Ozzy carried inside. The sessions were raw, urgent, and electric, and for the first time since leaving Black Sabbath, Ozzy showed up every day ready to work. The downward spiral had slowed, replaced by momentum. Randy's presence did more than improve the music, it altered Ozzy's mindset. The guitarist's discipline, focus, and youthful hunger rubbed off on the older singer. Where there had been only darkness, there was now a clear sense of purpose, and that purpose revolved around making something that no one could ignore. This was no longer about survival, it was about resurrection. By early 1980, one riff in particular had begun to dominate their rehearsals. It was bold, infectious, and impossible to forget, a pattern of notes that seemed to demand an audience. That riff would soon become the backbone of Crazy Train, the song destined to lift Ozzy out of the ashes. The comeback was no longer an idea, it was in motion. What changes when you meet the right partner at the right moment? The spark began with Randy Rhoads experimenting in rehearsal. One afternoon, his fingers danced across the fretboard, producing a sequence of notes that was instantly catchy yet heavy with attitude. Ozzy's head snapped up. That riff had something dangerous and alive, the kind of hook that could carry an entire song. Bob Daisley started layering a bass line underneath, giving the riff a rolling momentum. Lee Kerslake followed with a pounding beat that locked it all together. Within minutes, the room was vibrating with energy, each musician feeding off the others. It was as if the song had been waiting for them to find it. The working title didn't matter. The sound was everything. Ozzy began scribbling lyrics, channeling his restless spirit and the feeling of living on the edge. The phrase "I'm going off the rails on a crazy train" became the song's heartbeat, a line that captured his chaos and resilience at once. It was personal and universal in equal measure. Recording at Ridge Farm Studios in Surrey, England, the track came together with a precision that surprised everyone. Randy's guitar tone was razor sharp, the bass was relentless, and the drums hit like thunder. Ozzy's vocals soared over it all with urgency, as if every line might be his last chance to speak. The energy in the room was unlike anything they had felt before. When the final mix played through the monitors, they knew it was special. Sharon, who had been present for much of the process, recognized its potential immediately. Crazy Train sounded like nothing else on the radio at the time, fusing metal aggression with an unforgettable melody. It had the power to cross beyond the boundaries of heavy rock. By the time Blizzard of Oz was released in September 1980, Crazy Train was already turning heads. Radio stations picked it up, fans blasted it from their cars, and Ozzy could feel the tide shifting. This was not just a single, it was the engine of his rebirth, the song that would carry him from near oblivion back to the top. The flame was fully lit, and it was roaring. The release of Blizzard of Oz marked the official start of Ozzy's second act. Almost overnight, Crazy Train became the track that every rock station wanted, pulling him back into heavy rotation. For a man the industry had written off, this was a resurrection in real time. The success translated quickly into ticket sales. Small venues gave way to packed theaters, then to arenas buzzing with anticipation. Fans screamed the opening riff before Randy even hit the strings, their voices blending into the roar of the amplifiers. Each performance was a declaration that Ozzy was back, stronger than ever. Life on the road became a different kind of fuel. Long bus rides that had once been filled with silence and doubt were now alive with laughter, planning, and late-night guitar work. The bond between Ozzy and Randy deepened, creating a creative partnership that pushed every show higher. The stage was no longer a place of pressure, it was home again. The sound checks told their own story. Even without the lights or the crowd, the band played with the same ferocity as in the main set. The amplifiers didn't just carry the music, they carried the weight of a comeback, sending that power into every corner of the venue. Each show felt like a victory lap, but also a challenge to go further. Critics, once skeptical, started to take notice. Positive reviews called Blizzard of Oz one of the most exciting hard rock debuts of the decade, highlighting Crazy Train as its standout. Ozzy was no longer a fallen star, he was a headline again, and his name was being spoken with respect. The shadow of his past was finally shrinking. By the end of the tour's first leg, it was clear this was more than a comeback. It was a transformation, built on the connection between an iconic voice and a young guitar prodigy. From the ashes of his lowest point, Ozzy had built a new empire of sound, one powered by riffs, sweat, and pure will. The amplifiers were louder than ever, and so was the message. By the midpoint of the Blizzard of Oz tour, it was undeniable Ozzy was not just back, he was dominating, and Crazy Train was leading the charge. What had started as a gamble had become one of rock's great redemption stories. Audiences were a mix of longtime fans and a younger generation who had never seen him with Black Sabbath. The energy in the rooms was electric, with every crowd erupting as soon as Randy played the opening riff. It was no longer just a hit song, it was a unifying anthem. The set list was crafted for maximum impact. Classic Sabbath tracks kept veteran fans satisfied, but it was Crazy Train that lifted the roof off every venue. Ozzy leaned into the song's power each night, his voice carrying the same urgency it had in the studio. The chemistry on stage was undeniable. Media coverage exploded. Interviews, magazine covers, and television appearances reframed Ozzy as a survivor rather than a casualty of rock excess. The narrative had shifted from self-destruction to resurgence, and Crazy Train was always at the center of the story. It was proof that he could thrive on his own terms. In the studio between tour dates, the band began working on new material. The success of Blizzard of Oz and its signature single gave them both freedom and confidence. They were no longer chasing acceptance. They had it, and they were determined to build on it. The comeback was becoming a foundation for the future. By the tour's end, the numbers spoke loudly. Sold-out shows, platinum sales, and a song that had become a staple of rock radio worldwide. Ozzy's place in the pantheon of rock legends was secure again, not through nostalgia, but through reinvention. The rails of the Crazy Train showed no sign of ending. Years after its release, Crazy Train remains one of the most recognizable riffs in rock history, instantly sparking energy in stadiums, arenas, and even sports events worldwide. For Ozzy, it is more than a hit. It is the song that saved his career. The track became a permanent fixture in his setlist, outlasting trends, lineup changes, and shifting musical landscapes. Every time those first notes ring out, the crowd roars as if hearing them for the first time, and the song's power shows no signs of fading. It has become an eternal symbol of his resilience. Beyond its commercial success, Crazy Train influenced countless musicians. Guitarists studied Randy Rhoads' opening riff, while vocalists took note of Ozzy's urgent, commanding delivery. The song bridged the gap between heavy metal and mainstream rock, expanding Ozzy's reach to a wider audience. It redefined what a comeback could look like. Even after Randy's tragic death in 1982, the spirit of the song endured. Each performance became a tribute to their collaboration, a reminder of what they built together in such a short time. The track kept their creative bond alive in the hearts of millions. The legacy of Crazy Train is inseparable from the legacy of Ozzy Osbourne himself. It turned a man written off as finished into an icon of survival, proving that the right song at the right time can rewrite destiny. It became the rallying cry of a career reborn. Today, decades after those first sessions at Ridge Farm Studios, Crazy Train still blasts from speakers with the same ferocity. Its rails carry not just a melody, but the story of a man who refused to disappear, and its echo continues to inspire every generation of rock fans. The legend of Ozzy Osbourne is forever tied to that unstoppable ride. Over the years, Crazy Train has transcended its origin as a single on Blizzard of Oz to become a cultural touchstone. It has been embraced far beyond the walls of rock, appearing in films, commercials, and major sporting events, where its opening riff signals adrenaline and defiance. In these moments, the song's spirit escapes the stage and enters everyday life, proving that its impact is not limited to fans of the genre, but resonates with anyone drawn to its unstoppable drive. From the lowest point of his life to the heights of rock immortality, Ozzy Osbourne's journey through Crazy Train is proof that the right song can rewrite history. What began as a desperate attempt to start over became one of the most enduring anthems in music, carrying his voice and his legend across decades. If this ride reignited your love for rock, subscribe, and join us for more stories that shape the sound of our lives.